Hello, my friends. I hope you had a fantastic week so far. This week, I'm going to be interviewing Lee. Now, Lee runs a incredibly good, incredibly interesting networking group based in Scotland. He does half his group in person and half his group online. And we were talking about how you can get started with networking, why network's even important, and why actually networking could be the solution to your economic, potentially challenging problems, midterm and long term for your business, but also some strategies to help if you're in a short term cash flow building stage. Because it's an interesting world out there at the moment. We're all trying to move forward and do what we can, and hopefully that's what this show can also help you do as well. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again. I'm now going to hand over to past me to carry on this conversation.
Thank you so much, Carlton. My name is Lee Foster. I'm based in Scotland, in Glasgow. Don't let the accent fool you. I'm originally from the northeast of England in a little town called Whitley Bay. But I've been an adopted Scotsman now for over probably 15 years or so, really. My business is Revitalise Connecting People Limited. And what I've been doing over the past 6 years is actually helping people network more effectively. I've been helping business owners identify opportunities and build long-term business relationships, which in turn helps them create and nurture a solid business development process, but most importantly, looking at how to grow their business and how to grow their role with speaking to people, having conversations, and networking online and in person. I think in this day and age, we're bridging the gap of both areas, virtually and in person. So again, that's part of my business for the past 6 years, helping people understand and get the most out of their networking and business development processes, Carl.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you for the time. Thank you for coming on. It's a really unique and interesting place, networking, right now, because as I was alluding to in our pre-conversation, I've kind of made a non-traditional shift into where we are with the business because we're content creators. It makes more sense for me to really push content more. It opens up a lot of opportunities. But it also brings me on to one of the main pain points that we both agreed a lot of starting out business owners really have, which is time, right? Now, trust me, when you scale and when you become busier and when you have a larger company, time becomes even more valuable, right? Separate conversation entirely. But when people say they don't have time, right, I think it's regarding priorities. I don't think it's actually about time. In my second business, we talk about this a lot in dating, where like, oh, I'm too busy to see you. Nah, you're just not a priority. Sorry, right? And I think it's the same in business. But what would you say to someone who, look, the reality of the fact is the economy is in an interesting place. We don't have as much work flowing through the door as we probably did, maybe even in the pandemic or maybe before the pandemic, etc. What would you say to people who are like, I don't have the time, Lee, to go and talk to people, go and have a network, jump on a call, etc. All of those things that us seasoned networkers would do and know how to do very well. But the kind of, it's that kind of it's like, how does it make me money? How does it move me forward? I don't get it. I don't have the time, Lee. It's not, it doesn't work. Help.
I think there's a good point on that, Carl. I think it comes down to, and if you remember me saying this, I'm not going to sugarcoat it whatsoever, is taking networking seriously. Taking networking seriously as part of your marketing structure or your marketing strategy in your business. Networking is something that we do, but when people say to me or connections say to me, I haven't got enough time in my schedule. Well, part of that is coming down to planning and preparing for the road ahead. As a business owner, we automatically react to something that happens ASAP. We need to do that now. And we need to just get that organized and fill up our schedule that it gets bursting for the month ahead. But I think a lot of times it's down to the planning and setting out the stall in the right way, which we've mentioned a lot even before this call, Carlton, is looking actually, okay, what have I got on my schedule that I want to achieve in the next month, the next quarter, or the next half of the year, or the next 12 months. I'm a big believer in setting out maybe 3 months in advance, a skeleton of knowing exactly, okay, that's what I want to achieve next month. But to do that, I've got to be able to dedicate the time to communicating, to being visible in the right networks. So to answer your question in a long short of things, is the planning, which it really comes down to. I think a lot of business owners and people in sales, it's ingrained into you to plan for the road ahead. To set out the right goals, the right objectives you want to achieve, and you're aiming for those key performance indicators that we regularly do in sales. But when it comes to networking, I think it's taking it seriously as part of your marketing structure.
Yeah, I really agree, and I think it's something which, look, the reality of the fact is when you start networking, it's uncomfortable. When you start networking, it's difficult. When you start anything, it's difficult, right? But I think one of the hurdles that a lot of people don't push through is either, okay, this is uncomfortable and I'm just going to have to do it until it's comfortable, or they're overwhelmed by the concept that it is too uncomfortable to do, right? Talking to people who you don't know can be difficult, but social skills as a principle is something which you will learn and will develop as you do it more. But I think the core is about understanding, because one of the misconceptions I had very, very early on in networking was, right, it's my time to pitch. I'm here to sell Lee on video. Right, Lee, let's have that conversation. But why is that maybe not a good idea?
I think some people have this perception when it's networking to sell to the room. You unfortunately become either one in two camps, either a farmer or a hunter. And I do a few talks around this as well, is that if you're a farmer, you're looking to plant the seed. You're looking to wait and to give it nutrition to hopefully let it grow and your field becomes strong and healthy. As a hunter, you're literally scouring the area and literally wiping the slate clean and moving on to the next field. Everything's been scratched away from that. I think it's so healthy to educate your audience, to identify what you want to talk about. When we try to sell to the room, it gets taken the wrong way. In my eyes, really, Carl, is you're trying to educate everybody regularly, consistently with what you want to offer, the areas that you can help people. When you offer help and support and assistance, I think that comes across a lot easier to an audience or to someone individually. If you really go gunning in for the sale straight away, it puts people off quite quickly. People, I'm not ready to do that just yet or commit to that just yet. But if you're looking to educate, give them time, think about it, they will tell other people about you. And that's one of the big things that people forget about in networking. It's that you are speaking to the fun part of the audience. And this individual, this Carlton, is now going to, if he understands what I'm talking about and how we address certain areas in our conversation, the art of networking is when Carlton goes out somewhere else and starts speaking to somebody differently and hears something that I've mentioned today, you get an introduction. You get an opportunity to do business.
And I think that's a really important disparity between the two, right? Because I think, as I say, traditionally we'll go in and go, right, who can I sell my shit to, right? And I think for me, yes, you can go that approach, and that's kind of, I guess, in some ways the old school approach of networking, right? It was kind of a speed dating-esque roulette of, oh, cool, I won a job because the one person that I ended up speaking to, or two people I ended up speaking to, wanted video at the same time as I opened my mouth talking about video. Fantastic, I won the timing lottery. Hooray. But as the pandemic kind of took hold and as networking has changed, right? Because online networking was kind of a thing, but wasn't really prominent until COVID, right? And I think for me, it was about then understanding that actually you need to tackle networking very differently to, a network meet and greet event-esque, you need to tackle very differently to a sales, objective sales, reality sales, a cold calling conversation. And there's no issue, you should be doing both, right? I think the conversation around is how much room, how much time, how much runway do you personally have as a business? In some respects, how much money do you have in the bank, right? How much work do you have coming in? If you're in a position, legitimately, where you need to make X amount of money within 2 weeks, feel free to disagree, but I don't think networking is necessarily the best decision at that point, because you don't have the time to nurture the people who you're going to talk to. You need cash now, right? Now, the question is, how did you get to that situation? And as I'm sure we can discuss further. But the crux of that conversation is actually developing a cold sell, a cold approach, cold outreach, sales offer approach is always going to serve you well, especially in an economy that's slightly more challenging in comparison to when the work's flowing, the phone keeps ringing, etc., etc., etc. But then what happens when you actually are good? Let's say I've got 3 months room. Cool, fantastic. So, yeah, you've got work now. What about 3 months' time?
Yes.
What about 6 months' time?
Yeah.
What about a year's time? What about 14 months' time? What about 18 months' time? What about 24 months' time? And I think sometimes I'm only worrying about today, right? I mean, how would you help someone who you're talking to that is very stuck in that mindset of, I have so many things going on today, Lee, I can't possibly think about 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, etc. to, I guess, help them change their mindset around that? Because for me, I think that can actually be the more, the dicier, or the potentially the slow death of a business if someone's not careful, especially in an economy like the reality is that we're in now, right?
It's a good question to have, Recon. I think where a lot of people in a position is that they're trying to get a result straight away. Now and again, like you've just really shed a light on there, was that you'll go to a networking event online, predominantly now, we've got a good mix of both areas, and in person, and you hit the money bang on the dot. You walk in a room, someone wants to speak to you there and then. That happens. Ta-da! Great. The order book opens up and you've got an order coming in straight away. The thing is with networking, the reality behind it is that you are building a pipeline around you. And what you've just touched on before there is that you've got to start from somewhere. And I always say with networking, go out there and try various things to see what works for you, but have the remember that you're going out there to educate the audience, find out who's looking for what, showcase what you do and how you do it so well. But here's the thing, it's consistency that really works well for you. And what a lot of people forget about is that you are building a pipeline around you. And where a lot of people do with networking is that, yeah, within 3 to 4 months' time, there might be a stage where that sales stop. So what's going to take that place? What's going to jump in and look after that sales revenue that's coming in? You know, everyone has a shelf life. Everyone has a time that they'll work with you for so long as such. And that's one of the big things with networking. It slows it down or stops it altogether. Is that when you stop that little area that you're in, once you're out of sight and you're out of mind, people forget about you. You heard that phrase, out of sight, out of mind. It happens within networking. So there's got to be a fine balance between being actively involved in the networks that you're part of and spending the right amount of time in there to have a very good cause and effect with that group. Because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be your customer. But I'll guarantee you one thing, they'll have customers that they know that will be your customers. And that takes time. So start off slowly, gradually, get a good grounding, get a few sales in from what you have available now. But at the end of the day, you're not going to sell to the room. The elevator pitch or promoting yourself is a way to do it, but you're educating people regularly and consistently. You're trying to get that penny that just drops and goes, yeah, I want to work with you. Hearing from other customers in the room, etc. as well. So for me, answering that question there, it takes time, but you have to start from somewhere, and it's all about consistency and building your pipeline.
I think it's important to mention as well that any marketing, specifically we're going to have a conversation about networking here, obviously, but any marketing as a whole, the consistency element is the most important element. Whether you're doing content, whether you're doing photos, whether you're doing written posts, whether you're doing networking, whether you're doing podcasts, whether you're doing etc., etc., etc. It is about consistency, because what you want to do is you want people to build a habit around consuming your podcast. You want people to build a habit around watching your show, watching your YouTube channel, meeting you in networking. Oh, and tips and tricks I always give to people about networking is, let's say I meet Lee for the first time and he mentions he's going to go on holiday or his kid was ill or something, and it sounds a bit pedantic, but you remembering that the next time you see him, even if it was 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line since you've seen him, hey Lee, how was the holiday? They'll go, wait, like, they'll firstly do that, because if it's been a while, they'll think, wait, which holiday? Wait, what? What's going on? But they'll then realize, actually, wait, hold on, the person was actually listening, right? And I think and I'll throw it back to you, but I think the question that a lot of people when they're starting out in networking have, well, Lee, I'm not confident. Lee, I don't know what to talk about, right? Because I don't want to come across as me, right? So what would you say to people who are very, okay, sure, I'm going to put myself in this uncomfortable position to network and to talk to people, but how can I like keep a conversation flowing, right? Because as I said in the pre-show, it's very easy for us because we're seasoned in that process. Therefore, we can kind of bounce. We know how to flow because we have those social elements because we've been doing it for years, right? But for people who haven't, who are maybe starting out in business, how would you suggest and how would you recommend that they, start and initiate a conversation, or like actually start the concept of networking as a whole? Because I think there's two elements. Number one is like, okay, I've got to go to this bloody event where I have to talk to people I don't know. Fantastic, right? But then also when I'm there, what the hell do I do then?
Yeah. Here's the key part to this that people forget about as well, Carl, right? Is reach out to the organizers. Speak to the people who organize the events. They should be the conduit. It's something I pride myself on very highly, because if people come along to my events or my sessions or online, I encourage people to reach out to me before the event happens and ask the question, I'm looking to speak to X, Y, and Z. If you know who you want to speak to, ask the organizers. That will make it, first part of this, will make it so much easier for you, because then if they've got the right organization, there'll be people in the in-person room that'll go, oh, you're brand new here, Colin. Can I introduce you to such and such? Or you're the organizer. Listen up. Thanks for asking, being in touch beforehand. Here's the people you want to speak to. We'll identify people in the room to go and talk to. The hardest part is with any networking is being the wallflower, right? Is walking in with a lack of confidence. And the lack of confidence isn't that you're not great at speaking to people. It's just that it's a new environment for you. We have to embrace new environments that we go into. Here's my little gauge of thumb, really, when you walk into an in-person room, is if you see two people chatting away, don't interrupt them. If you see a group of three people there, wait to be invited. Wait to catch their eye contact. If there's someone on their own at the event, just walk over and initially say, how are you? And find out, is it their first time at this event? What's brought them back? What is your business about? Find out a bit about them first, and then delve into the business afterwards. Why did they come back to this event for? What was so good the last time? Who do I need to speak to in the room? Find out a bit about them. Find out about their interests, their sports, their hobbies, things like that. Really, that even when you hear about their sports, that opens up another networking sphere, as we all know, because I'm wearing a golf shirt today. But it opens up another sphere of opportunities to chat to. But what it does also do, it gives you the chance to use your active listening skills and listen to what's being said. That's part of sales, is actively listening to what people are saying to you first and reacting to it in a way that you've actually understood it, and you direct them in the right direction, from there. So I think, don't get me wrong, it's hard to start off with, but to make it easier for you is reach out to the organizers, reach out to the hosts, reach out to the people who run those events, online especially. Use LinkedIn, use social media platforms to bridge the gap and speak to people before you go there, and find out from them who would be a good fit for you to start to talk with. It'll make your lives so much easier.
I think it's a really important point you mentioned there, and that's why I want to reiterate it, is like you can go into a networking room and say very little, right? If you go into a networking room with some prepped questions in your head or even written down and say, okay, I'm going to ask the three people I'm going to speak to during this event these 5 things, people love talking about themselves. Yeah. They love it, right? If you're new, don't talk about you, right? Because what will happen is once they start a conversation, if they're interested in you and they're realizing that they're dominating the conversation, they will then ask you a question, which is very simple. You just answer the question, right? And by that point, you've already warmed yourself up. You're already kind of, we might be still not ideal. You might still be uncomfortable still, but you'll be more likely to be like, actually, this amazing thing happened. Blah, blah, blah. You're going to start with like the generic, how's business? How are you? That kind of thing. But the reason why that is they're icebreakers to break apart, right? Yes. it takes someone who's seasoned to come in and go, okay, well, how are we getting it? And this was with the context, and also like, do you know the person as well, right? And this is where, as I say, if it's a second or third event that you've been to and you notice someone that you talked to last time, what can you go back and remember about what you talked about last time, and how can you start the conversation there where you left it off 2 months ago, month ago, 6 months ago, etc. But something else which is a really hot topic in the networking and business sphere at the moment is, well, in COVID, there was this massive swing towards online for obvious reasons, and now there's been kind of a retraction, I would say, in, online's kind of a fad, we don't need online, Is it a preference? Is it better? What's your view? Because I think some people are going to say online's better because XYZ, or vice versa for in person, right? But for me, I think it's a preference, and I think it's about appreciating and understanding. Do we go back into this kind of nostalgic-esque, in the old days I went to this in-person event and I got my business that way, right? Is that why people think? Because I think it's quite quick to jump to a conclusion which is like, in-person's better, or on the other side of the camp, online is better because you built habits around it, right?
I think, there's a good point there, because I've talked to many people about this over the last probably over the last 18 months, really. I think online is part and parcel of what we offer now, and it should play a part in your networking that's going out there. It's so easy, like the days before you travel for a couple of hours before getting to a networking event, or you're spending time getting there and you got to rush out because you got to go to another appointment, not setting at the right time parameters. It's so much easier to push a button and jump online like we're doing today via Zoom, having that conversation. I think it should be the best of both worlds. I've embraced both in my organization and my business. I have a place for the online side, and I have a place for the in-person. But what I've also done in a lot of my local live events, in-person events, I've incorporated a virtual part of it for the ones who can't make it there to the in-person. They can actually access the online part of it throughout the event itself and feel part of being there, as most importantly. But I think there's a place for both. I think there was a bit of a shift towards we've got to get back to meeting people face to face, which is great. I totally respect that. But there's a place for it, and online should play a part in your business. Because I spoke to many people in the last few weeks, and they're going, wow, I've been able to use a lot more time in my week doing 5 or 6 one-on-one meetings online. Brilliant. How did you get on with that? Did you set out the right agenda? Did you get the right objectives you want to achieve from it? Yeah, totally. And I was speaking to people all around the world. We'll show the world map behind me. It's what online has done for us, especially networking, has opened up the geography even further. I've got people in Florida, people in Canada, the Netherlands, South Africa, all across the globe jumping online and chatting to me. It makes it so much easier to break down that boundary and have a chat with somebody. But here's the thing that they're doing around the world is they're speaking to your audience in this country still as well. So you get that. I would 100% agree and encourage online and in person as a mix of both when you're going out there to plan your networking in general.
I think it's also important to mention as well, though, that it does kind of have an asterisk on what you do, right? Because I'll use myself as an example. Video production is possible anywhere on the planet, yes, but it's probably not overly practical to fly me to America in comparison to hiring an American-based company. I'm not against it if anyone's watching, but, sometimes it's not necessarily the best description. But if you're a coach or an insurance broker or a networking professional or et cetera, insert other global opportunities, global brands here, you can quite literally become a global brand by being on the internet. I have coaching clients in America. I have coaching clients in the UK. We're at opposite ends of the country, can I just add, right? Etc. So for me, especially as a more content-driven marketing strategy now, the online element is a necessity for me by proxy, because it allows me to basically, because the internet as a whole, because of what we do, is my breeding ground, is my shop window, right? And I think there's going to be a set of traditional minded individuals that have a complete right to be traditionally minded, but I think they're going to leave money on the table if they don't try to leverage and try to understand. You know, this is a conversation we've had about AI recently as well. Like, people are pushing back on AI because it's like, oh, it's good, but it's not a human. And it's like, well, yes, but why does it need to be a human? Why do you need it? Because it's only going to do work that you wouldn't want to do anyway. And you can do it more efficiently. But I think it's that, as I say, I think for me, the traditional kind of in-person events is because that's what we've done for hundreds of years, or etc. And it's that nostalgic-esque, it's what works. So they go into a sense of, especially when the economy gets slightly more difficult, they want to go back to their kind of they know what works element. I mean, how have your clients been finding it, or people you speak to, you know, in regards to like, because I've kind of seen two kind of companies or two kind of businesses at the moment. Ones who are like taking on the economy as like, right, yeah, okay, this is the reality we find ourselves. It's a challenge that we can overcome. Let's move forward. What do we need to do? What do we need to change? How do we need to pivot? What other things can we do? And then there's other ones that are kind of going back into their shell. They're kind of retracting. They're kind of, I won't go as far as saying getting scared, because I think in COVID they were genuinely scared. I don't think it's necessarily a scared reality. I think it's just I don't know what to do, so I'm kind of seized up by the number of opportunities and the number of things that everyone's telling me, right? Because depending on who you talk to, they're going to push whatever they have a financial bias towards. And it's completely subconscious bias, right? But I'm going to say do video because I sell video. You're going to say do networking because you sell networking, etc. A website person is going to say you need to do more on your website because they sell website services. A copywriter is going to say don't use ChatGPT, use me because I can write it better than ChatGPT. Right? It's that argument. What's the solution? What are you seeing? What are people saying? And how does someone potentially, like, I guess, find their own path, find their own thing, find their own comfort zone? Because I think it's very easy for us to go, oh, there's so much there, I'm not going to do anything.
There's one thing you just mentioned on there as well, is that they get an overwhelming feel to it all. It's so much like a wave washing over you of various things that are happening, especially in the marketplace and the economy and various things that are going on right now. But one of the big things that we haven't mentioned is that people don't speak up. They don't say anything. They put their head in the sand and they think it's all gonna fix themselves. One of the biggest things of what we talked about is that, you know, you talked about, well, if there's somebody in the States, will they use my services? Well, they might not, but they might use your advice. And there's also people in your industry that want to do best practice. They want to chat through the challenges that they're going through right now. One of the biggest elements of networking and speaking to people is chatting about the challenges that you're going through, sharing best practices within an industry, identifying a community-driven network and organization that you're part of that is there to assist you in growing your business in these challenging times. You know, there's so many people out there now that will not bridge the gap and say, listen, I'm going through this at the minute. So am I. Let's talk about it. Let's identify, you know, a solution between us to fix it. You know, the collaborations, the help, the assistance. That is what I believe in networking is the core element of it all that people forget about so much. They talk about the sale, they talk about the opportunity, Carlton, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a support structure that's around you. It's people that are going through exactly or have been through some of the challenges that you're going through right about now. And if you can bridge the gap and chat about those sort of areas that you want to fix and assist, that's powerful networking, by the way. You know, it's so much more than having that, I mean, in best respect, having that blanket approach to thinking, I can't go there, they won't work with me. Well, no, they will. You just need to start chatting to them. You know, break it down and chat about those areas in your business, because guaranteed they've been through it or they're just about to go through it and they need help as well.
And I think there's this approach, and I think it comes from social media as a whole, especially someone who unfortunately spends their life on it, is this kind of highlight reel, we're doing really well, everything's fine, everything's all good, no matter whether it is or isn't, right? Because social media is designed to be more positively leaning, right? And something that I've tried to do for as long as I've been in business is actually share the shit, so to speak. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want it to be perceived as this illusion of, yes, I'm a successful video production company. Yes, I'm a successful entrepreneur, blah, 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 blah. Yes, that's technically true. But also, you can have anxiety. Also, you need to be vulnerable sometimes. Also, you need to look at the market and look at the problems that you have in your business and go, shit, I don't know how to fix that. Not like legitimately, I don't know how to fix this problem, right? This problem is on my desk and I don't actually know how to fix it. And that's where I think either your community through content, your network, and it's different because I had this conversation with a friend of mine who's not a business owner, who's a traditional employee, and they can't, and it's not even their fault. Their mindset can't understand the issue because they're used to a paycheck arriving at the end of every month, no matter what the economy does. That's the reality of having a job. Fantastic. For a business owner, that's not the reality. Especially if you have employees, you are the reason why the paycheck appears magically into their bank account, right? But how do you fix those problems? How do you do all this inner working? How do you run this business thing? And that's, I think, the powerful part about having a network that allows you and facilitates. And to be honest, it's kind of down to the owners and kind of down to the organization that runs the networking to facilitate that vulnerability environment, etc. that allows, and this kind of leads on to the next question I was going to ask you, but allows business owners to really be honest, because I think sometimes our ego, our pride, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, doesn't allow us to go, yeah, but I'm going to go under in like 2 months if I don't make something happen. Like we've both been there, I'm sure. I've been there countless times. It's not a fun place. But there is a reality and you need to have a backbone and you need to have an understanding to go, right, here we are again. The wolves are about to be at the door. How do I fix this problem? Some of the time you will have, through experience, the fix to the problem. But some of the time you'll have to go to your network, go to support, etc., to say, hey, by the way, this is what I'm dealing with. This is how I'm struggling. Any suggestions? Help? Anything? I mean, it's kind of a two-pronged question, I suppose. Then, how does an organization, a set of owners, a set of founders that own a networking organization, whether that's in person or online, facilitate that environment? Number one. Number two, how does a business owner approach actually doing that for the first time? Because we've talked about it being uncomfortable to go in general, but there's a very different level of uncomfortability and a very different level of stress and a very different level of scared to be like, so Lee, I'll be really honest with you, my friend, if I don't get this right, I'm under.
There's so many people that won't actually ask that question though, Carl. There's so many people that actually won't say that at all. What they need to do as an organization or as a network in general has to have or facilitate specific meetings in place every month where they feel comfortable chatting to one another, talking to each other. They should have forums or meetings once a week that they can address those areas, address those challenges. A member or an individual as part of a network has to feel comfortable sharing that information in those little silos or those little groups that you're part of. You wouldn't put that out possibly to the whole group, but you probably have an identifier of a certain group of people that you're with. An organization needs to address that and help that and make that easier. As an individual, the answer to the second question there is they have to feel, once they've got that comfortable feel of it, they can address it. They know they can approach somebody and ask the question. I think it's so hard because we're talking about mental health awareness. We talk about putting a head in the sand and letting things just get on top of us without addressing it straight away. That's usually what happens with some business owners. And I think as an organization, as organizers, as a business owner of a network, they have to be making sure they've got items in place to try and support their groups, support their individuals as much as possibly they physically can. To have a team of people around them that if they're not around, they've got people they can approach and speak to. There has to be individuals within the group and association that can reach out and speak to people on a one-to-one basis and be there as a support structure to them. And I think, don't get us wrong, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. We hear that phrase used so much times. People go, oh, I want to start running a business. Well, try it. go for it part-time and nurture that into one of your bigger businesses. And people thinking, I want to do something. Well, do it. If you got the opportunity, give it a try and do it. If you want to stick in your business, stay within your own company that you're part of. You want to stay in a role, stay within the role. Try something out part-time and build it up to your own sort of big business that's out there right now. But that's a great question to have, because when a business starts to grow, we start to feel uncomfortable. When we start feeling uncomfortable, that's when a business is ready to grow. When you start feeling like it's easy, that's fine, but you'll keep getting what you're getting and keep doing what you're doing. So that's another point in itself, really, Carl.
And it's kind of, I mean, it alludes on to the next point I was going to make, which was around, as a business scales, the problems become larger, but also the thing that not a lot of people talk about is the stakes of you getting it wrong also become larger, right? Because you've now got something to lose.
Yeah.
You've now got stuff you've sacrificed. You've now got a brand. You've now got a perception. People are looking up to you as a successful business owner that is this and this and that. And it's like, that all might be true, but they're from their perspective. You're successful from their perspective because they're looking up towards you. There's always a bigger mountain. There's always a bigger business. There's always something larger. And the principle that I try to ground myself in every day is, it's me v me. It's not me v Lee. It's not me v Kelly. It's not me v Bob. It's not me v Sally. It's not me v etc. It's me versus where I was yesterday in correspondence to where I'm going to be tomorrow. That's it. Mm-hmm. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They're the only metrics that matter. Are you better, as in whatever your asterisk on better is, than where you are, right? So where you are now, was it better than where you were yesterday? But it won't be where it was tomorrow. And sometimes I think we get so into this, oh my God, this other company that happens to do the same thing as me. They don't, because it's not you doing it, but they happen to be in the same industry, is doing so well. I'll give you an example. This other video production company is really busy, but I'm not. Okay. But why does that matter? Firstly. Secondly, how many years of experience have they been in business? How old are they? How many, where are they based? What are they doing? And also, what opportunities can you now create with that time you have been given? Because this is what I keep saying to people, because people say, oh, when are you free? I'm like, I'm never free, because I'm constantly trying to develop what I'm doing to become either more efficient so I have more time, and then I try to fill that time again, repeatedly. So I'm trying to find more tools, trying to find more things, but also develop more revenue streams and other ideas and things that keep me being passionate and keep me moving forward, right? As you were alluding to about growth, it's about when you're uncomfortable is the best time. Like, as I alluded to at the start of the show, I am slowly moving away from traditional networking. Trust me, that's not comfortable. I can promise you right now, as someone who's traditionally got most of his work for referral-based networking across 8 years of doing it, and it being the backbone of my business, okay. In theory, in practice, is a different conversation. In theory, it's going to work. But the only way I'm going to know 100% it's going to work is by committing to the content strategies I'm pushing and saying work for clients as well. But also that's a vacuum for my business because of what I do and what I sell. That's not saying that you should do the same thing. No, because I also want to build YouTube channels and I also have other things going on, etc. There's a lot of stuff I have going on when you're content. So if you look at what I'm doing in a vacuum, I look crazy. When you look at it a little bit wider, you can understand why I'm doing it. Yeah. Right? But how does someone develop that mindset to be able to... Because I've been very fortunate where I've been brought up with the right values from my mother and etc. to understand that it's all about perspective and all about long-term planning. But how does someone who doesn't have that really come along that? Because, again, this is another caveat on why people don't network, in my opinion, is because they don't think long-term. I did networking for 8 years, and I'm now leveraging the network I've already got established. So I'm not technically stopping networking. I'm changing how I'm networking. I'm not going to networking events necessarily. I'm still talking to people every day. I'm still talking to people every week. I'm doing it slightly differently. I'm leveraging the network I've already built that has been established across 8 years, that people who know me. I may not be going to networking events as much, but that doesn't mean by no means I'm not networking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the big things you just mentioned on there as well is the brand. There's the brand as you. And what you're doing is leveraging the net worth that you've grown over those 8 years. So you've networked the right way because you've nurtured, cultivated, set up, put into place the circle of network around you. So you got the right people around you at the right time, and you're now utilizing the network that you've grown over the past 8 years. What a lot of people forget about in business in general is that I talk a lot about this as well, is about the brand of you as the individual. People don't buy Brunton Media, Carlton. They buy you as the individual. They don't buy the business that's providing it. It's the individual that's promoting the business at the time. You've heard the phrase, a reputation takes a lifetime to build, but takes a second to destroy. And that's usually when business owners aren't focused on the individuals that they're meeting, the individuals that they're putting out there, the individual that is you as the brand that's going out as the individual. In networking spheres in general, that's what we do. We're promoting ourselves. We're marketing ourselves on a daily basis. People may buy, don't get me wrong, will buy a product and service from you, but it's been instigated through you individually to start with. And that's something that people forget about so much, is that you mentioned as well as the brand values, the values individually, the values as a person, put it out that way. The relationships that we nurture for the long-term opportunity versus the short-term gain is due to looking at what we want to create over that time. Not just get it and run, get it, hold it, and nurture it and build it going forwards. But that's something that you're talking about understanding the brand recognition of you as an individual. And as a business, no matter how big or large that you grow as a business, it began by one person or one individual, that idea to get it out there. Never forget that. No matter how big you get, it was created by you thinking and scribbling it down on a bit of paper and going, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that happen. I visualize myself in 5 years' time, how that's going to work. Embrace it and go with it, and then look back in 5 years and go, wow, what have I just built?
And I think it's really important to firstly envision that, but see that. But also number two, that's why I think it's really important to do these tests of, are you comfortable, are you uncomfortable, right? Because, okay, let's say I try this for 3 months and it isn't quite working in the way that I want it to. Okay, I can just rejoin the networks I was part of and reallocate my time and resources back to doing that. And I'm sure I'll be welcomed back with open arms. It's not a, haha, Colton left, so he can't come back. It's not that at all. And I've been very honest with the networks I've decided to leave. I've said, look, I feel in my gut that with my skill set, you guys can't compete respectfully with what I can do, right? As I was alluding to in our pre-conversation, I'll put it on the record now. I can spend 2 or 3 hours creating some content that gets seen by 3,000 to 4,000 people. There's not really a network on the planet that can do that in that same period of time. I can't meet and talk to and connect with 3,000+ people. That's not a critique. It's a different level of connection. It takes longer to nurture. It's a colder connection, etc., etc. It's not the same. From a sheer volume point of view, though, it's very difficult to compete with that.
Well, it depends how engaged your network is. If you've got a network if you put something out there, they're 100% behind it and they go together as a full sales team with it, that gives you a massive impact on your social media or for general creative ideas. But yeah, I agree.
Again, it's in context, right? That's the important element that we're talking about here. It's within context. The soul just meeting on its own can't compete with that. In principle, it can't. That doesn't mean it should replace. It's a development of the business, right? And I looked at this when I was initially starting, Brunton Media as a concept. I was going, okay, well, why does Coca-Cola still advertise? Coca-Cola is one of the biggest brands in the world. You would think, why? Why do they still pay for advertising? That makes no sense. They've been around for nearly 150 years. Why? The reason is to stay in front of mind, right? So you can grow to a point, and look, some businesses will continue to network forever, but there is and I think there's a burden, and the final question I wanted to ask you is, what can networks do to keep themselves appealing? Because my critique as someone who doesn't run a network at all, by the way, is you can kind of get to know everyone quite quickly within a year, year and a half, and then the value add for that network becomes less, potentially, unless you have 20, 30 new people every month, for example. Then it still keeps the same value because I'm meeting new people, right? How would you say to maybe network organizers or people who are looking to do networking after this conversation, they tackle that? Because I think for me, that's the value principle. That's the value add. When you first join a network, wow, 300 plus, 400 plus, 200 plus, whatever it is, people that I can speak to that none of them know me. Great. That the value add at the beginning is incredibly good. But as you build that network and as people get to know you and trust you, the value is surely dwindling. Unless, as I say, you can bring in more. I just could be curious on your thoughts on that.
You've got to bring in new people regularly, consistently. Okay, now it hasn't got to be quality versus quantity that's coming in. It's not bringing in big numbers all the time. But one of the big things with networks in general is looking at the community that you've built around you and how that community interacts with one another quite regularly and consistently. They understand the thought process behind of building up that relationship, which we spoke about throughout today's talk as well. You know, a network is only as good as the people that they have in the networks themselves, in those clubs that work together. Networking works when you work it. You know, if you don't work it anymore and don't use the tools available in a network, is it going to work for you? It's like going to a gym. You stop, people train to do a marathon and then they stop the training after they've done the marathon and the body goes back to the way it was before because they haven't continued with the training. They haven't looked to develop themselves even further, to keep it consistently moving forward, to getting good at playing around a golf, being consistent with your shots and movement. But the likes of, I'm going to the sort of sports digressed on that side slightly, but in regards to networks, is that the members have to be consistently involved in the group or organization, happy to share and promote and bring new people in, invite them to come along and try it. That is how a network grows. But it's also their brand and understanding what that brand delivers, their mission statement, their values that the network brings to play. Don't get me wrong, Carlton, right? Every network's not for everybody. Certain networks will work better for others than other networks will work for them sometimes. But you have to find that out. You have to try them before you decide it's not for me. I'm going to try this one and that fits me, what I'm looking for. Everyone has something different they're looking for in business or within a role. At the end of the day, they're looking for sales. They're looking for business. They're looking for money coming into the business to invest back out if need be. But to get sales, you have to start with meeting people. And you have to start meeting people consistently. And you're educating people regularly and consistently. So the memberships or networks in general that I speak to is look at the members and see if you've got the right support structures in place. You're bringing new people into the fold. They're joining, they're feeling involved. They're not just left to their own devices. They're getting that support structure around them to help them develop their business, develop their role, grow their business, grow it to the next level. It's something I've prided myself on massively within my own network that I've created in the past 6 years. The people make the club. The people make the network themselves.
And I think that's a really nice point to end, but also a point that I want the audience to consider is if a networking organization, group, etc. does its job properly and you're looking to exponentially grow and not just stay at a certain size and sustain, you actually should, I would argue, outgrow them, right? Because your target audience when you joined will be a certain set of people, but also your target audience as you continue to grow and scale will completely change as well. So I'll give you an example. The clients we're trying to talk to and we're trying to articulate and who we can actually really serve and really give the most value to is completely different to who it was 2-3 years ago. Completely. They're not even the same scale of business, right? But also I can operate at a higher level in the respect of how I can support them and what I can offer them and the services I can provide them. So actually the networks I've been part of have been invaluable in that respect because they've facilitated that growth, right? So I think sometimes, and this is kind of what I mentioned about seasons as well, just because you leave a network and come back and etc., that doesn't mean like, oh my god, the network's rubbish. Oh my god, the network's over. Oh my god, the network isn't working. No, it means you have extracted the value, and the same with clients, right? We talked earlier about lifetime reality of clients. Sometimes you can only give a value to a client for a certain period of time to the point where you can't give them any more value. In the same way, a network can't give you reciprocal value. But for those who maybe want to connect with you, want to hear about yours, want to maybe get a push in the right direction to maybe if your network isn't maybe right, as we've already discussed today, but as a networker, you meet other networks. There's lots, we met in one that isn't yours, called Only, for example.
You wouldn't think it's collaboration. That's a lovely
Wow,
word to use.
shock,
I know,
shock,
stunning.
surprise. I know.
Big news press. Collaboration is out there, everybody.
Fantastic. How does people reach out? How do people have that conversation? Where's Beach?
Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with myself now is revitalize-connect.com. Just go to my webpage. It tells you, I've just had that revamped. It tells you everything about my background for the past 25 years. It tells you, more importantly, all about the members that are part of the Revitalize Business Club. But it tells you everything about the Revitalize itself and where it came from, how to get involved in it. It gives you all the information you need to do. It's a one-stop shop for everything about me and the business and about my members that are in there as well. So revitalize-connect.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lee. And final piece of advice, you're going to give one piece of advice to someone to leave who's listened to the show, really enjoyed it, and is going to now go out into the world and make their business more successful than it was when they started this episode.
As more as the world turns more impersonal, the more personal as a business we have to become. And that's just a quote that I shared with many people. One bit of advice from that quote is go out there and educate your audience. Speak to people, listen to them, find out how you can help one another, because that's how business starts to grow and develop. So look at the long-term opportunity versus the short-term gain, and just go out there and connect and just be
Thank you so much for coming back, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this conversation. If you did, I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. I'll be back next week with a brand new interview with someone else exciting, talking about how you can move yourself forward regardless of what happens with the economy, because we're going to change your mind, change your network, and change your abilities to operate a business now, and give you some things to consider and also be able to actually do moving forward. So thank you so much for giving me the time. Thank you so much for giving me the attention, and I'll see you very, very soon.